This is the video called Pattern Format number 2. Here we see a circle with a hole in it, and here we see the pattern that makes the circle. We'll go to Program though and see the routine. Here I've highlighted in green the routine that made that circle and then hollowed it out. First, it fills the 100 values at pattern with 0. Well, pattern's just a list. It zeroed it out to make sure the only thing there would be this pattern. Then it does a pats on the pattern with a 0. That means put the 0 pattern into pattern here. Well, what does that mean? I'm going to go down to the brown box here called Patterns. Click on it. And up here at the top it says there's sets of patterns. I'm going to go to set number 1. And here it shows that pattern 0 is a circle. Now we return to the program. Well, also it says it's being put in the list called pattern. So I'll go down here to list values. I'll go to pattern. Here we see in the beginning of the list called pattern is that pattern list for a circle. We'll continue on. Well, it sets R rotation to 0, S the size to 80, the position to 80, 70, and then it says use that data and this pattern to make the dots to put it into the position and using these control registers. Then it says make the color 5, that's the active color. Subtract 20 from the size parameter. Well, the control register for size was 80, now it's going to be 60. And then it says do dot A, which means add a pattern to the list of dots. Well, it's the same pattern, and the only thing that's changed is the size. And over here in the value in the action, it says 99. That means do it in reverse direction. Well, if the first pattern put in was clockwise and the next one was counterclockwise, it's going to make a hole in the object. Well, let's see. Here it does the polyfill. If we go back there and we execute it, we see first it made this outer circle and filled it in with dark blue, which means it would have filled this part in too. But then it did the inner circle in the opposite direction, indicating that it's supposed to erase that part. So that's what made the hole. Now this is just the circle. And remember, these are just relative positions. First of all, in the header here, it starts out 1,230,000, and then it has 25, meaning there's 25 values in this pattern list. The first is a relative position of 500, 350. The center is always 500, 500, because these are all relative. So all these values are with the center being at 500, 500. So they're all relative values. But when this was made, it said right here was the center of the circle. That is the center of the pattern. It wasn't at 500, 500. It was somewhere else. So it used these and used the control registers to place the circle here and then hollow it out. Now I'm going on to this next circle, but it has a star inside of it, and here we see listed the pattern for that star. It has only 10 values in it. Here are the relative positions, x 500, y 350, and so forth. The last one, x 485, y 480, and remember they're all relative to a position of 500, 500. Well, let's go look at the program that made this star cut out of a circle. We go to the program. Here we're filling 100 values at pattern plus 50 with 0 to to wipe out everything where we're actually going to put our pattern. Here our pattern is going to be put at pattern plus 50. Alright, we can have more than one pattern in the list called pattern. And it's going to be pattern 25, which I know is a 5-point star. Sets the rotation at 0, the size at 80, XY position at 8200, and makes the pattern. But then, well, it changes the color to dark blue, sets S to 70, a smaller value. It's going to put the star inside of it. The star is at pattern plus 50, and it says do it in the opposite direction it was created. Sometimes it was created in the opposite direction, so when you put something else inside it, it really doesn't work. Well, then you know, don't reverse it. But in this case, I know both of these patterns were made in the same direction, so if I want to reverse it, one of them I have to put the 99. And then it says go and draw it. Well, let's go back and look at it. Here we see it made the dark blue, and then it inserted this circle, the star inside of it, made it like it's a punch to punch out a star, but in fact the star was made in the opposite direction of which the circle was made. Now we're going to look at what created this dark blue circle. We're going to go to the program. Here I've highlighted in green the routine that created that circle. R, rotation 0, size 120, the position, XY, 243.10. But then it says the pattern to make the dots from is at list A plus 40. Well, let's go find out what that is. Well, we go to patterns down here in the brown box and click on patterns. Here's the column for the patterns in list A, and it says yes, there's one at offset 40, it's number 3. So I'm going to click on number 3. Oh, well, here we see that pattern. But when we look at the list of the dots in the pattern, there's only this many dots, and we see the dots going around here in red. So what created this other pattern between the patterns? Well, when this pattern was created, at each one of those dots here, it says insert another pattern there at size 36. Pattern number 2, it says. Well, we're on pattern 3. I'm going to end that, and I'm going to go to pattern 2. Oh, here we see that shape. So what we're seeing is one pattern being placed in another pattern. And here's the one that's being placed in pattern 3. So I'm going to go back to pattern 3. But what you got to understand, when it told it to put it between these two positions, like this one up here, it had to change the size of that pattern so it would fit between the two. That's why it appears here smaller again. It's the relative pattern to fit between the 2 points. Okay, and there we go. So this is the pattern at list A plus 40. So I'll end this, and you see that's the pattern it's going to show on the screen. It's going to be dark blue, and do the polyfill. We'll go back to the screen. And here it is, and we see pattern number 2 being superimposed, you might say, with pattern number 3. And here we see the values in it. We see between these 2 points here, there are 2 other numbers. This one here indicates the direction of which the pattern is being placed. Right now it says 1. If I change that to a 2, it made it go inside instead of outside. I'll change it back to pattern number 1. That way. Over here we see the size 36. Well, what if we made that simply 16? Oh, look how much smaller the pattern got between the two. It still had to stretch it out between them, but it's not the same size that it had been before. It was 36. This is how you can put a pattern in a pattern. Alright, that's the end of this video called Pattern Format number 2.